Hello, it's Shelley F Knight, bringing you Positive Changes, a Self-Kick podcast.
So today we're joined by Dr Catherine Wilkins, and she's a veterinary doctor, a chiropractor, and she's Hay House author of The Soul's Brain, the Neurology and Logic of Your Intuition. As well as all of that, she's also developed Fractology, which is a system of conscious intuition. So hello to Catherine.
Hello, Shelley. How are you doing?
I'm great. That's such a background. I can't wait to get started. So it's quite a diverse background, let's be honest. And so I have to ask, what is the inspirational change that you can share today? What's got you to where you are?
Oh, well, a million different things, of course, but probably more than we have time to talk about. But I guess the main gist of it is that, well, I grew up the classic intuitive cuckoo in a scientific family. So like my dad's, he was a professor of mathematics. So he really believed in education, which meant that I wasn't allowed to go on a gap year or anything like that. You know, you just have to keep on with your education. So I really had no idea who I was or what I wanted to do at that age. So that's how come I did the veterinarian studies. And then it really didn't take me that much time to figure out that drugs and surgery wasn't me. But that was also connected with something that was going on for me personally, which is that when you grow up in that kind of family and you're very intuitive, well, the intuition doesn't really fit into that sort of science kind of model so easily. So I guess I shut all that side of me down. And so that wasn't such a good thing. And so when I started to open it all up again, as I said, it didn't take long for me to realize that drugs and surgery wasn't me. So then I was looking for what are the principles behind intuition, because I was really trying to get my left and my right brain, my science self and my intuitive self, to stop having this war inside my own head. It's kind of like all the arguments, discussions, whatever you want to call them, that I had growing up about, well, whether intuition was real or whether it was just you were making stuff up. And instead of having those discussions with my family, they were happening inside my own head. So I had to find a way that my science side could actually work with my intuitive side, and they could actually work together, and it made sense from both perspectives. And that's actually what Fractology came out of.
So that's blending the science with the intuition.
Absolutely,
okay.
Yeah. Because and that's that book that you mentioned, which I have to say is actually on sale at the moment. If anyone's interested, they go onto the Hay House website. But anyway, so yeah, that. The principles of my work, that's what the principles that I talk about in my book about the soul's brain, the neurology and logic of your intuition. Because to me, intuition, a lot of us look at it as if it's some kind of magic. It's this sort of rare thing that happens, and it's a little bit mysterious, but it makes wonderful things happen. Well, to me, that's lovely, and it's a little bit like, if we go back 300 or 400 years ago, we didn't really understand the principles of music either. So in those days, it was only special and rare people who could actually be musicians. You almost had to be born into it. to be able to do it. It wasn't something that you could sit down and, like, anybody who was interested, we couldn't just sit down and learn it. But, you know, since then we've learned about the principles of music, you know, pitch and rhythm and the relationship of the different frequencies and all that kind of stuff. And so now it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's completely brilliant at it, but if people are interested in it, if they want to learn about music, they can learn about it. And to me, intuition is the same, because there's always been people who were not just intuitive, but who could be consistently intuitive. And if anything can be done consistently, then it's not random. There are some principles at work there. So yeah, so that's what I set out to find for my own sake, really. So that, as I said, so I could stop this argument in my head. But once I stopped the argument in my own head, I found that when I was working with other people, you know, if I shared those principles with them, that they were really a benefit to a lot of people. So then I put it all together into the system of Fractology. And yeah, anyone who wants to learn to develop intuition as a consistent skill, well, it's like any skill, it takes a bit of work or practice, really. It takes a bit of practice to get there, but as long as you've got a little bit of knowledge and you're prepared to do the practice, you can develop the skill.
Fabulous. I'm just going to stop you there. I'm not sure if the headphones are making a little when you move. Do you want to try without the headphones? Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Let's abandon headphones.
Sure.
I'm just thinking that it's making a little scratchy sound. I was waiting for a pause. I was like, whoop.
Sorry, I do tend to flap my hands around.
That's all right. I think it's a bit more echoey without, but then it's got a scratchy sound if we have them. So I'm like, oh, what should we go for? Fabulous. So sorry, I've lost your throne now, haven't I?
No, that's right.
So then I can come back and say, why do you think intuition is so important? Yeah. Okay. So intuition sounds a little bit like a muscle that if we work on it, we can get it going as such. But why is intuition so important, do you think?
Well, apart from the fact that it is kind of magical and that's really lovely and fun, it's actually, to me, it's because of the way that it works. Now, there's actually several reasons why it's important. One is because intuition, it is very much connected with our ability to be connected to who we really are. It's kind of like if the more that we are in alignment with, or, you know, centered in ourself, it's kind of like the less noise that we have in our own head, in our own space. And so it's much easier to hear our intuition talking to us. So to me, intuition is important because the more that we practice it, it actually makes it easier for us to then be in our authenticity, because that is really what our intuition is for. Our intuition is that part of us that is trying to tell us all the time what it is that we need to do to help ourselves thrive, to really be brilliant in our own life. And so the more that we listen to it, the more that we can live in our authenticity. But I also think it's becoming, with the way that the world is becoming more and more connected and more complex because of the way it's becoming more and more interconnected, I think that we need a way to be able to navigate that complexity. See, the way that most of us were kind of taught to think growing up was in this very right, wrong kind of thinking. So it's kind of like we had two boxes. One was right, one was wrong, and we had to decide which box to put everything into. And, you know, sometimes I suppose it was some things were right, some things were wrong, and the other answer was maybe. But maybe just meant you hadn't decided which box to put it into yet. And then, you know, as the world became more complex, we tried to make that very simple system, we tried to kind of stretch that system to fit more things by saying, well, some things are more right than other things. But unfortunately, that just makes everything very murky. because it means that people can say, well, okay, this might be wrong, but it's less wrong than that thing, so it's okay.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, things can get quite murky. So the thing is that intuition, the way that intuition works is that not only it works two ways. One is it has this pattern-based way of thinking. So, for example, if you think of a tree, so your little left brain, the right wrong part of the way our thinking, likes to go, it likes to collect all bits and pieces of facts and figures about the tree. Like, okay, so the chlorophyll, the green pigment, it transforms sunlight into sugar. You know, so energy from one form to another, so the tree can use it, and other facts and figures. But what your right brain does is it looks at the tree and it looks sort of past all the little twiglets and the branches, and it's looking for the pattern that connects all those facts and figures. And then that tells you what parts of the tree are actually growing in alignment with that pattern, and which parts of the tree are growing out of alignment with that pattern. So, and that's actually a lot of how your intuition is working, because if there's a part of the tree that's out of alignment, well, clearly that part of the tree is got a little bit of trouble, whether it's because it's got a parasite or a broken branch or something. Whereas the parts of the tree that are in alignment, those parts of the tree are healthy. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So is this how you're bridging your kind of your science with the intuition with the tree example?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's more to it than we see.
That's,
yeah.
Yeah. So your left brain finds all the facts and figures, but your right brain tells you, or your intuition tells you how to line up all those facts and figures so that it's actually going to work for you. It's actually going to support who you really are. It's going to support your authenticity or whatever it is you're wanting to create. But also because it works from this pattern-based way of thinking, it has this ability to connect up sometimes very diverse, bits and pieces into a bigger pattern. So it gives us a way of working with that. It gives us a way of working with very complex things, but it also gives us a way that we can move beyond right and wrong. Right. Because it enables us to start to operate more from systems thinking. So systems thinking is more like, well, instead of looking at it, is this right or is this wrong? It's looking at, well, this is what I want to create, whether it's my own authenticity or this particular project or whatever. Okay. So that's what your intuition is actually attempting to do. It's attempting to guide you towards the outcome that you're after. Yeah. So your intuition, when you get those funny little feelings, so whether it's a funny, uneasy feeling, so that's telling you, you're getting off track. So you need to get back on track for where you want to go. When you get a funny, excited feeling or happy feeling, that's saying, yeah, you're on track, keep going. Yeah. So then the more that we start to operate from that, the more that we realize it's not important whether things are right or wrong in a sense. What is important is if we're on track or not. Yeah. So the more that we realize that we work on that, the more that we stop giving ourselves a hard time about things, because we realize it's like, okay, so I made a mistake. I got off track. But if I spend all this time giving myself a hard time about getting off track, all that I'm doing is I'm wasting time that I could be using to get back on track. So we very quickly start to realize when we think that way, particularly when we learn to think that way consciously, that mistakes aren't important in the sense of they're not really going to ultimately determine what the outcome is. What is more important is how fast can we correct?
Yeah, and I love that. I mean, I did grow up absolutely with the right and wrong, But as I get
Think we all
older,
did.
yeah, the parenting of the 70s, I tell you. But I think now it's not so much right and wrong. I just put everything down to experience. But I've been through so many like life lessons to get to that point. Going, no, it's just a life lesson. It's just an experience. You know, it's all just what it is. But it is a real learning curve. But the intuition, I get that. That kind of niggle, isn't it? You get in your tummy. But interestingly, when you speak about the soul seat, you don't think it is in your stomach, do you?
No, I mean, the thing is I talk about the soul seat because it is a point of reference that seems to work for, you know, everybody. So the soul seat's actually here. So the way that you find it is you come to, it's called the sternal notch, but basically it's the top of your breastbone where your two collarbones come together. You start there and you come down, I don't know, 2 inches or 5 centimetres, whatever you're thinking. And you'll find actually a little ridge on your breastbone. So it's actually where your second rib attaches, if you know a little bit of anatomy, but never mind. So there's just, if you come down, you know, sort of a couple of inches or 5 centimetres, you'll find that little ridge. And the soul seat, the point that we're after is actually just at the top of that ridge. Okay. Now, that point's actually been called several things over the years. Soul seat for high heart, but it's actually also over the thymus.
Yeah. And
the thymus is part of your immune system. And so if you've ever heard of T cells, you know, that doesn't matter if you haven't, but if you've heard of T cells, the T actually stands for thymus. So, you know, it is a very important part of your immune system. And if you think about what your immune system does, your immune system says, look, you know, this is part of me, so I better look after it. That's not part of me, so I better get rid of it or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because of that, you know, one of the old words for intuitive was actually, they used to just be called sensitives, which in a way is a term that I like because it's quite, for me, it's quite accurate because really what it is intuitive people, everybody's really intuitive, but whether they're consciously intuitive or not is another thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's about, can you pay conscious attention to those more subtle signals?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so, you know, we all have an immune system, obviously, so really learning to pay conscious attention to how it's feeling in that area. Really what we're doing is we're using our inbuilt system, our immune system, to help us train ourselves to pay attention to those things that are going to be expansive for us or that are going to, well, really not be so good for us. So, yeah, but what you were saying about getting a niggle in your gut, you know, that's also valid because the interesting thing about your intuition is that although the principles of it are the same, and I can, you know, teach everybody that, because the purpose of intuition is really, it's about, you know, my intuition is to help me be more Catherine, yours is to help you be more Shelley, you know, it's you know, that's what the purpose of our intuition is. So it is in many ways one of the things that can take a little bit of time and sometimes a little bit of, you know, experimental patience or something, is learning to understand how it is that your intuition talks to you, because it's almost like your intuition is talking to you in your own private language.
Okay, so if we was to start today with intuition, which is one of my favorite words, I love things like intuition, magic, alchemy, all of those. But with the intuition, what tip could you give us to like start today? How would we start to tap into that?
Okay, so one is, as I said, your intuition is very much, you know, the more you are centered in your own self, the more that you are going to be able to tap into your intuition, because those two things, you know, they're very closely connected. So one of the first tips is, you know, certainly go and learn about your soul seat, but one of the truths about your intuition, and it's just inbuilt in your neurology, is that when we get ourselves freaked out, and of course at the moment it's very easy for a lot of people to be a bit freaked out at the moment.
There's a lot of freaking out.
Yes, there is. But it's like if we can just calm our system down so that it's easier for us to center ourselves, to hear ourselves, that just makes it so much easier. So one of the things that we can do without any training whatsoever is just breathe.
Good advice.
So yes, breathing's helpful. But if one of the tricks with your breathing is that when we breathe, that through the mind-body connection, if you really kind of do your best to just slow down the out breath, that actually can drop you into those deeper states. If you know what I'm talking about. So do you know, like the brainwave states?
Yeah.
So you've got beta, alpha, theta.
Yeah, and I was thinking the parasympathetic system as well, like with your box breathing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So when you're in beta, your brain is going 10 to the dozen kind of thing, and that's when you're in freak out mode. That's when you're in fight flight. So so, and then in alpha, that's more a state of relaxed alertness, and the deeper that we go, theta, and they say that some of the the yogi masters, they can actually even be in delta and still be conscious, although most of us are probably in a little bit of a coma or something if we're in delta.
Yeah.
But
or speaking directly to God, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But through the mind-body connection, see, we all know that when we get ourselves freaked out, we tend to, our breathing just picks up speed. We tend to go, we have that rapid breathing, and that actually sort of becomes self-reinforcing, because through the mind-body connection, we're breathing like that. It puts our brain into that beta state. And the beta state will then make us breathe in faster and so on. So just by slowing down the breathing, and particularly slowing down the out breath. So if you just breathe in and then just do your best to really relax on the out breath, so that the breath just takes as long as you can let it take. See, I mean, even just me talking like that, everything just seems.
Yeah, that was me. I was just thinking, breathe, Shelley. It's your voice. I was like, yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. So just by calm, like slowing down the out breath, that is a signal to your whole body. All right, let's just calm and get centered here. So that's the first tip. The other tip is, because your intuition it's all about being focused on what you want to create.
Yeah.
So the more that you can focus on what you do want rather than what you don't want, the better you'll do. Now, what do I mean by that? It's that old thing about, if I say to you, Shelley, this is really important. Whatever you do, do not think of a pink elephant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, see, of course, the interesting thing is the only way we can avoid thinking of a pink elephant is to immediately think of a purple giraffe or something.
I love the zoos you must have in Australia.
My dad used to tell stories about Akbar, the invisible green camel.
Brilliant.
Yeah, anyway, so so the thing is, and it's really interesting, I mean, the times that we're going through now, with all the social media stuff and everything that goes on, they actually say that we're not really even in the information economy anymore, or the information age. We're actually now in the attention economy, because the things that can grab our attention, well, they can turn that into cash, really.
Yeah.
So, but that in itself highlights how important it is for us to be focused on the things that really work for us. And your intuition, interestingly, works the same way.
Yeah.
You want to be focused on the things that you want to create, not the things that you don't want to create. And one of the really simple tricks to help us get to do that is, see, most of the time, one of the questions that people ask themselves all the time is, can I do that? Or, you know, whatever it is that they want. And, you know, they say that there's no such thing as a stupid question, but sorry, that's a stupid question. It's a stupid question because it's really not helpful. When we ask ourselves, can I do that? The problem is, well, what's the answer? Yes or no?
Yeah.
And if the answer is yes, you're no further forward, actually. So you haven't really got a lot out of that question. And if the answer is no, you've just stopped yourself. So that's a question that's got lots of downside and no upside. But you can change it with one little word. And that little word is how. So instead of asking yourself, can I do this? If you ask yourself, how can I do this?
Yeah.
Well, your mind will immediately focus on what it is that you want and how to navigate yourself to get there. So that one question, how can I do this? How can I achieve this? You know, whatever it is for you. And you've changed it immediately, because that question also, it has no downside, because you're kind of assuming that there is a way.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting how when we assume there is a way, we tend to find it. And there's all upside, because most, you know, you will find a way. And even in this current situation, okay, I mean, we had some of the same silliness going on here as, you know, you guys, from what we hear, we're having, you know, like people hoarding toilet paper for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's worth more than gold.
So well, so at the beginning of the situation, because I didn't actually, because I don't, to be honest, I don't tend to listen to the news too much.
No, I don't.
No. So I'd actually gone into the supermarket because I was getting low, just, you know, and I walked in and all the shelves were there. And I looked at that and went, oh, that's weird. They must, you know, are the suppliers on strike or something? I thought, oh, I'm not going to worry about it. I just set my intuition, you know, it's like, well, tell me, you know, let me know when there's toilet paper. And anyway, so a little, you know, a day or so later, I just got the sense of like, oh, I should go there. So I did, and it wasn't, you know, the toilet paper I normally get, but, you know, it was fine.
Does the job.
Yes, and then of course I started hearing about everything that was going on, and then I went, oh. So then of course I thought, oh, well, I better get some more in case we need it at the clinic. So again, I just said to my intuition, well, tell me where to go, and I did, you know, a different place this time, but, and then we didn't really need it for the clinic so much, but I was handing out emergency rolls to some of my clients. And one of my clients was saying, oh, you know, he was very grateful because he's got a much larger family than me, and they were down to their last roll. And he said, well, where did you find it? And I said, I just asked my intuition. You know, I said, you can do it the same, you know, same thing. You know, how can I get toilet paper? Or, you know, where do I need to go, you know, to get toilet paper? Because he was saying, when he came to see me that day, he said that was what his afternoon was. His afternoon was going to every single supermarket or shop he could find or think of, hunting for toilet paper. And I said, well, yeah, you could do that, but that sounds very tedious. You know, because our intuition is so good at navigating, it enables us to actually navigate life in a way that is much easier and much more graceful. And so I said to him, look, just, you know, you can do this. You got this. You got intuition. but you've got to activate your intuition by focusing on what you want. So if just ask yourself, right, where do I need to go to get the toilet paper? And when I saw him the next time, he texted me actually, but when I told him to ask himself that question, he immediately got a thought, an answer popped into his head. And so he went to that place on the way home, and sure enough, there was toilet paper.
Do you think from that story, because like I was saying earlier, what's the tip to kickstart the intuition today? And it could be sort of sitting down, doing a meditation, breath work. But do you think it works well for the non-believers, like the gentleman with the toilet roll, where you think, well, I don't believe it, but how can I find toilet roll? Do you think when you sort of surrender to it, it still comes? Yeah,
absolutely. But there's but the same principles still apply. See, it is very much part of our inbuilt system. We actually do, just in the same way as we can recognize the pattern of a tree. We all have inbuilt intuition. It's just that, see, most people expect their intuition to just be able to work, immediately.
Yeah. Because
we forget that when we were kids, we spent years and years learning how to use our left brain. We spent years and years learning how to read, how to write, how to, I don't know, do maths, basic sums or whatever it is. And we spent all of those years at school, really, for most of us, unless you went to art school or something, most of us didn't do much training on the right side of our brain. Mm-hmm. Most of us did all of our education, all of our training on the left side of our brain. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that, someone who's never had that training doesn't have the capacity for it. They just haven't had the training. Well, intuition is very much like that. Everybody's got the capacity, but whether or not we choose to develop it consciously, that's a very different question. But the same principles still apply. Like, if we stop and, because in order to hear the answer, when we have to stop and listen. So the more that we just stop and calm ourselves down so we can, hear the answer, that helps. And then asking the question that is actually helps our mind focus on, well, how do I get from here to where I want to go? For most people, they will get an answer. But then, of course, there is this other little bit, which goes back to our connection to ourselves and our authenticity is, then you have to be willing to trust or act on the answer.
Yeah, and that's huge, isn't it? That is when we override it and think, nah, ego-led, and we sort of go off on one.
Yeah, absolutely. See, the thing is that, it is learning to trust ourselves with our intuition is just like learning to trust anyone. It's once I obviously am very comfortable with my intuition, but then I've worked with it for years, so that if I get an intuition around something that might ordinarily be a bit riskier, like when I bought my house, for example, like the house that I bought, quite frankly, well, the aesthetic of it when I bought it is what I described as old man manky. It was, like the people who'd lived there had lived there for a very long time, and every time they'd done something to the house, somehow or other the house got smaller and darker. And but I just knew that underneath there. So anyway, so a lot of it has been, fixing up the place it was almost like renovation archaeology in a way. But, stripping off layers and layers of masonite and, but underneath all of that, there was, original pressed metal ceilings. There was original sort of wooden lining boards and, you know, all sorts of gorgeous original features, but it was under layers of a whole lot of other stuff. But see, that's to trust my intuition over something. Obviously, that's a bigger decision. And if I hadn't been working with my intuition for years, I don't know that I would have been willing to listen on such a big decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, in a funny way, this current situation, that's one of the things I've been telling my clients. It's like, well, it's in some ways it's a perfect time to practice working with your intuition. You know, because if it's going to help you find toilet paper or whatever else it is that you need, and of course that's a fairly low risk situation. I mean, you know,
that's really valid, because some people will be thinking like, oh, we don't know. But yeah, start with toilet rolls, or start with like, should I have a, like, you know, this in my sandwich for lunch, or this, you know, start small and do it. You said about you hear the answers. To me, it's like, I get a knowing. It's just like, right, Shelley, this is what you need to do. So how else might somebody know their intuition's working? You say you can hear it. I think I have a knowing or a sense it. How else would people know?
Yeah, I should probably mention I've recently started up a YouTube channel on living intuitively. So if people want to, because I'm just mentioning that because I know that I've done a video on the kind of like 10 different intuitive languages, but I might forget some right now. So that's why I'm mentioning it. Because we are all wired up differently. I mean, that's kind of the trick. I mean, it's like, you know, because we're all human, so we all follow a basic pattern, but we're all, you know, just in the same way as every single snowflake is a six-pointed star, but at the same time, each one is a completely unique six-pointed star.
Yeah.
So sure, we're all human, but we're all put together in a completely unique way. And because of that, our own personal language is actually quite unique to us. So yes, knowing is that is a way, you know, that is one kind of intuition. It's the same, the way I often talk about that, it's the same thing as, well, for me, intuition, there's kind of like two parts to it. There's like internal alignment when you're connected to yourself. And then there's external alignment, like what are you going to do with that awareness in the world? And it's usually when we get those two lined up that, you know, our intuition is obviously at its most effective.
Yeah.
And so that sense of knowing, to me, it's often that state of internal alignment. It's like when every part of us is all lined up, it's just that sense of knowing, because we don't have any voices going, are you sure? You know, it's like every part of us agrees. So so that state of knowing is, some people call it a sense of calm, you know, that it feels calm inside, or it's a knowing, or it's just a sense of alignment. But yeah, that is a really you know, that's a really clear, for me, that's a really clear sign that yes, your intuition is sort of firing on all cylinders. But you know, one of the other terms for intuition is extrasensory perception, because in many ways intuition, because the universe is, you know, it's all kind of electromagnetic radiation, or if you prefer, it's all energy. But that energy, it all has, you know, it has different frequencies, different, you know, we know that we have, you know, infrared light, ultraviolet, we have the visible spectrum, we have radio waves, TV waves, microwaves, you know, they're all different parts of that electromagnetic spectrum. But so our physical senses, we just perceive like little slices out of that. You know, I talk about all of this in my book, but the thing is that, you know, we know that like different animals, for example, they actually can see different parts of the electromagnetic spectrum to what we can see. Like, for example, reptiles can see infrared, which, you know, that isn't just about, you know, hunting dinner at night or whatever. That is, you know, if you're a reptile and you have to warm yourself up in the morning before you can get going, it's really helpful to know which is the warmest rock.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that makes sense. We know that a lot of insects can see ultraviolet. And if you actually look at a lot of flowers under an ultraviolet, in the ultraviolet light, so to us the flower might just look, you know, it might all look like, you know, one colour. It might all look red or yellow or whatever. But under ultraviolet light, it's almost like it's got arrows pointing at the middle, going, well, you know, that's where the pollen is. Because
okay,
yeah,
I love that.
yeah. We also know, for example, that that birds can actually see the magnetic lines, you know, of the planet, which is how they navigate. They've found.
What, the longitude and latitude?
Well, they actually, I mean, they're not following, you know, GPS coordinates, but they actually can see. Yeah, they can actually, you know, like that our planet has this electromagnetic, you know, we do have a North Pole and a South Pole, and there's magnetic lines that go around the planet. Well, the birds can see that.
Oh wow. Yeah,
that's how they can navigate. And so they've actually also shown that we can't see that. We can't see physically those electromagnetic lines. Sorry, the magnetic lines. But they've done experiments in Stanford actually, and they've actually shown that we may not be able to see the magnetic lines, but our brain will actually respond if the magnetic field around us changes. Our brain will respond to it.
Okay.
Now, some people's brains respond really strongly, other people not so much. Now, sorry, this is a very long-winded way of answering your question. But what I'm saying is that intuition, in a way, it's kind of like being able to perceive things directly with your brain.
Okay.
Right. But at the same time, in order for us to understand what our brain is perceiving, it will tend to present that information to us as if it is coming through one of our senses or another. So when we just get that sense of knowing, it's almost like, well, our brain has just picked it up and we've just got it directly from our brain.
Yeah.
Cool. You know. But sometimes, particularly when we're first learning to work with our intuition, you know, it's like the brain is trying to give us the information in a way that we can understand it.
Yeah.
Because in many ways with intuition, we all pick it up, but the question is, how good is our interpretation of what we're picking up?
Yeah.
You know, it's like even before we could read, we could see all the little squiggles on the paper, but our ability to interpret them probably wasn't very good. Anyway, so some people, because of that, they will see, you know, it's almost like they're getting pictures in their head.
Yeah.
And so that could be just different colours, or it could actually be or symbols, or it could actually be as if they've got like a little video playing in their head.
Yeah.
Some people will hear things. Again, it could be, you know, like symbolic things, or it could be like somebody, you know, or as if somebody's playing music, or it could be like as if somebody's standing next to them talking. Some people will feel things, so they might feel it actually almost as if it's a physical thing, like that feeling in the gut, or, you know, a chill or something, or they'll get it sort of more like an emotion. Some people, believe it or not, will also get it through taste or smell.
So are these all like the clairs, like the clairvoyance, clairsentience, clairaudience? Is it exactly that?
Yeah. it is exactly that. Yeah, but
Oh, right.
but for example, if you're clairaudient, doesn't necessarily mean that it's always just hearing people talking.
No.
You know, it could be just a sound or something. So it is actually learning to interpret that. So for example, for me, like with me, because see, do you know, like in NLP, they talk about modalities, like some of us are more visual, some of us are more auditory.
The auditory and the kinesthetics and things like that.
Yeah. So the thing is that it isn't necessarily a guarantee, but the chances are that if you are more visual, your intuition's probably likely to be more visual, because your system just works that way. If you're more, if you're more auditory, you're more likely to be clairaudient and so on. It's not it doesn't always work 100% of the time, but it's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So yeah, so for me, I'm quite visual. So, and of course, as you said in the introduction, so thank you, is that I'm a chiropractor, I'm a vet. So of course, one of the things that you're taught to do is to read X-rays. So with my intuition, when I was first starting to really work with it consciously, it was almost as if people had an X-ray film in front of them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now, of course, it was just like I was seeing that in my head. Now, of course, we don't walk around with X-ray films in front of us. It wasn't that was what was really going on, obviously. But it was just like, that was because I knew how to read X-rays. It's like my brain was doing its best to give me the information.
Yeah.
And because that was something that I could interpret, so, but see, but it's like most things. So actually that, I tell a slight little lie. Actually the first thing that I actually started to see was, it wasn't even a complete X-ray. It was almost like I could just see black blobs on people.
Okay.
And that's because that was where their system was, disconnected or shut down or something. But as I said, it is like trust. It's like the more that you work with it, the more that you go, okay, well, you're prepared to act on the information that your intuition is giving you. Well, it's just like any of your friends. If your friends tell you stuff and you ignore it, then, they're not likely to tell you a lot more.
Yeah.
Whereas if you talk to your intuition, or you listen to your intuition and you act on it, well, then it will give you more information. So so when I started to see those black blobs, and I would go, okay, so I would focus on that area and do whatever was necessary to clear whatever that was. Well, then after a while, then it's almost like the blobs turned into X-ray films. And I don't see anything like that these days. It's almost because I've worked with my intuition sort of long enough that it's almost like I can read energy as easily as I can read a piece of paper these days.
I love that. I just love the story behind your intuition, and it's going to be really helpful, because I really hope that people are going to start trying to trust their intuition. I think we use it in the extreme, that we think only when we're scared do I go down this alley in the dark. Always probably no, I should imagine. But
generally good advice.
Generally good advice. Probably don't need your intuition in that scenario. Just don't do it. But I think, you can start to use it like, should I return to work? When we're going back to this new normal, as we're calling it, maybe while you're sitting here in the current normal, we could start to use the intuition while we've got the time, we've got this slow down during lockdown. It's as you said, really good time to start, but be really open about how it can present, because you could be visual, hearing, niggles, anywhere in the body, outside of the body. So thank you. Yeah, it's really helpful.
Oh, cool. Well, so like in actual fact, one of the little exercises that I get some of my students to do, if they want to try and sort of, if they need a more kind of formal way to try and figure out, well, how is my intuition talking to me, is to get a number of little boxes, like little match boxes or something, and so the boxes all need to look the same, and put something different in each one of the little boxes. Yeah, so you might, I don't know, put a key in one and a Monopoly piece in another, and a couple of coins in the next one or something. It doesn't matter what it is. But and then what you do is you close your eyes and you mix them all up, and then what you're working to do is your intention is to use your intuition to tell you, well, which thing is in which box.
Right.
But the trick is to not just sort of try to take your time and not just leap to, well, the keys in that box and the coins in that box or whatever, but to actually consciously go, and it's actually helpful for people to write things down as well, is to go through like each one of their senses, to focus on each of the boxes, sort of almost as if, okay, like, if I look at this, am I getting any pictures in my head when I look at the different boxes?
Yes.
When I focus on each of the boxes, then, then do it, auditorily. When I focus on each of the different boxes, am I hearing something different? And then write those things down. And then at the end, then you can have a look at what all your different senses are telling you about each box, and then see what, if that sort of all adds up to which object is in which box. And the thing is if you do, this is important for a couple of reasons, because the problem is that we tend to leap to the interpretation.
Yeah. But
sometimes we get the interpretation wrong. Like in my book, The Soul's Brain, I tell the story of, like, this is from some years ago, because I used to do this exercise quite often with my students. I would actually get a shoebox, and I would put just whatever weird objects were around the house, like in the box, and then I would get them to do the same exercise, but obviously they had no idea what was in the box.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. I mean, with a bit of practice, they all got quite good at it, really.
Yeah.
But this particular story was like, it just shows that the importance of going through each one of your senses and writing it down, so you've got it there. Because what this particular time, this one student, she drew this object, because, like, if you get little images, I say, well, it doesn't matter. It's not about the quality of the drawing, just, draw it. So she drew this long, skinny thing with a point at the end. And of course she wrote underneath it, pen, because that's what she assumed it was. She thought it was a pen. Anyway, then when I took the lid off the box, when everybody was done, she looked in there and she goes, oh, I didn't get anything right. And I looked at her and I said, hang on a minute. And I pulled out one of the objects, which was a 6-inch nail. I have no idea why I had a 6-inch nail.
No.
I can't remember. It must have been for some reason. Anyway, but like she'd seen it. She'd seen the shape. But her interpretation was, obviously needed some work. So, so the problem is if we keep jumping to the interpretation, we don't always start to, that can make it very hard to really start to get a better process.
Yeah.
Whereas if we stop and we actually quite consciously go through the process of listening to each one of our different senses, we start to get more self-aware about, like, which sense works better for us.
Yeah.
And then of course, once we know which of our senses is the most reliable, well then we know, and we can listen, we can pay particular attention if our intuition is coming in that way. And of course, interestingly, when we do that over time, when that we know that particular sense is more reliable, we develop that trust, and then it does over time then tend to open up, because these days I can get my intuition through any sense really.
Yeah.
But I know that internal state, that sense of, not just a sense of knowing, but I know when I've got that sense of internal alignment, I know what that feels like. So I know when it's just, me talking nonsense to myself, and when it's my intuition talking to me.
So people might get a mix though, mightn't they? They might not get a strong one, because I know I'm sort of like clairaudient, clairvoyant, clairsentient. So you can have a mix, isn't it?
Well, of course, as I said, it's you're perceiving things directly with your brain. Yeah, you can. I mean, you might find that certain intuitions around certain things tend to come more specifically through one area or another.
Yeah. So I think of the future, it's visual. I can see things visually in the future, but more current things, it's more of like a sense or a knowing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good, when I'm working with clients, for some unfortunate reason, when I'm working with clients and there's some old toxicity in their system, I always get it as a taste. It's gross, but it's very accurate, So there's all this, there's a number of drugs that I have personally never taken, but I know what each one of them tastes like. And sometimes, it is tricky to interpret it. Like I was working with a client once, and he was a fairly youngish chap, he came from a sort of a Mediterranean, like his family was sort of Mediterranean culture. They have, there's a lot of weddings, very extended family, lots of weddings. But anyway, he came to see me really because even though he was quite young, he was starting to actually have liver trouble. No apparent reason for it, no family history, fairly young guy. Okay, maybe he drank a bit of alcohol, but not excessively, so, what was going on? And so I started working on his liver. And when I was working on him, it's like I started to smell, not something revolting, which is what I would have expected, because, I was working on clearing all these, because there was, because I could, when I was working on him, I could, the gross bit was I could taste these pesticides. And I said, you've got pesticides in your system. And he goes, where would I have got that from? And I said, I have no idea. But that's what I'm getting. And he goes, oh, all right. I mean, he thought it was a bit of a loon anyway, it doesn't matter. But anyway, so I started to work on clearing the pesticides, and I started smelling all these really beautiful flowers. And I just thought, it was during the summer, and the windows were open. So I just thought, well, it must be coming in from outside.
Yeah.
But so I tried, but I sort of kept trying to just sort of put it aside, but it just kept coming back stronger and stronger and stronger. And so in the end, I had to say to him, I said, it's the weirdest thing. I'm smelling all these beautiful flowers. And he just looked at me and he started laughing. And I said, okay, what's, he said, well, he's a guy. So his drunk trick at these weddings, like when he got, when he'd had enough drinks, he would start eating the floral decorations on the tables. It's like, okay, so now we know where the pesticides come from.
That's a brilliant story.
Like, but my point is it's like, you know, on the surface, that's a ludicrous thing. But, you know, so sometimes, yeah, you are actually getting accurate information.
Yeah.
But sometimes you don't have enough information to be able to interpret it. But if you don't trust what you're getting, you're not going to go looking for, you know, the information that you need in order to be able to interpret it properly.
Yeah, that's a brilliant story. I absolutely love that. And that is a real leap of faith in yourself, isn't it? It comes back to the authenticity where you really need to believe in yourself and know yourself and trust yourself. Just to say to some bulking young man, just sort of like, I'm getting these lovely flowers around you, you know. Because you do have moments when you have these visions and these things, and you think like, I feel as mad as a box of frogs, but I'm going to go with it. Don't you? But I love that. So your tips are sort of like, you know, calming down, the breath work, trusting yourself and things like that. Are there any other tips?
Yes. Well, you know, it's...
Apart from buy the book.
Well, buy the book, yes, obviously. Great, you know, buy the book, so, you know, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Absolutely. But I think the biggest one is really what we were just talking about, which is you want to practice, you know, and in the sense of because intuition, in order to be able to act on it. See, the problem is for a lot of people, we rely on, you know, we think that our intuition is this thing that comes in, you know, in these magical moments or maybe under emergency situations. Yeah. And look, you know, I've got those stories too, if you want to. I've got 1,000 stories. But the problem is like the example you gave about the, you know, the dark alley or whatever, is that if we wait until things are really scary or stressful, and then we're hoping that our intuition will help navigate us out of the situation. The problem is our intuition is like a muscle, and it's almost like when we are stressed or freaked out about something, it makes it actually a lot harder for us to hear our intuition. Because we, you know, when we're freaked out about something, you know, that thing that we are scared of, that thing that we don't want to have happen, that keeps kind of trying to take up all our attention. And in a way, that thing is being really noisy in our space. Yeah. So unless we're really used to hearing, you know, our intuition and knowing that that's what our intuition is, it's really hard for us to listen to it in those moments. But it's a little bit like, you know, if I'm teaching people, you know, because a lot of people, of course, from a chiropractic point of view, their back issues are really, well, it's connected to their posture, you know, at work or just, you know, walking around or whatever. But the thing is like if people are waiting, you know, to try to get good posture, like after they've really injured themselves, it doesn't mean that they can't do it, but it's much, much harder. Whereas if you practice good posture and then something untoward happens, you know, because, you know, you forget for a moment and you lift something incorrectly or something and you've injured yourself, well, actually you're going to recover a lot faster if you've got those muscles already working than if you've injured yourself and you've never worked those muscles. So yeah, take the opportunity, but, you know, particularly at the moment when people are stuck at home bored, you know, it's a perfect opportunity for people to practice if they want to take it. Yeah, because if you practice that muscle ahead of time, and particularly if you practice it enough that you know how it is that your intuition talks to you, then as I said, it's like it is a trust thing.
Yeah.
And so if we're waiting until we want our intuition to talk to us about big life decisions, you know, buying a house, you know, marrying a particular person, moving country, taking a new job, you know, any of these big decisions, and we haven't actually practiced with our intuition, and the problem is that we won't really know that it is our intuition talking to us if we haven't practiced it beforehand. Whereas if we have practiced it beforehand and we know, well, you know, it's much, well, we know if that is the voice of our intuition, and so it's much easier to trust it and therefore have kind of confidence or certainty around the choices that we are making.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Absolutely love it. So earlier you said about the word how and how it takes you from, like, you know, the yes and no, right and wrong, almost back to the childhood, isn't it? Is it right or wrong?
Yes.
And but if you put in the powerful word of just how, it turns it into an action. So that's one word, and that's one way of using it. Do you have like a daily, like an affirmation you use at all, or do you just purely do your intuition?
Well, I think see, I have what I call an intention, I suppose, which is kind of like an affirmation.
Yeah.
I mean, an affirmation is just a statement of intention anyway. But anyway, for me, I've had the same one for years. I mean, I might have other ones around particular little projects, but I've had the same one for years, which is just every day I'm going at the end of every day, I'm going to be more of who I truly am, living in more joy than I did at the beginning of the day.
Oh, wow.
That's it. As far as I'm concerned, if I achieve that, and, you know, of course, I probably don't achieve it every day. But, you know, if on average, you know, I have more days moving me closer towards who I really am than away from who I really am, well, to me, everything else in life, well, you know, it'll just get taken care of in time. And as I said, there is such a close connection between intuition and being who you really are, or living in your authenticity. Yeah, I mean, those two things, in a way, you can't, you know, it's almost impossible to grow your sense of who you really are and live in your authenticity more without your intuition growing. Yeah. You know, I mean, if I was going to be a little bit new age about it, I'd say, well, you know, it's there in the word itself. It's the tuition that comes from inside, you know. So, but it is that. I mean, the more that we are who we really are, because that is actually the function of our intuition. Like I was talking about the pattern of the tree. Well, in a way, that's the function of our intuition, to help us or to guide us or to tell us, you know, whether or not the things that we are doing is actually strengthening, you know, the pattern that is us, or is actually, you know, weakening or distorting that pattern in some way.
I love the word authenticity. It's up there again, along with the word intention and alchemy. What I was going to ask is, you know, like, because I'm quite authentic, I try to be like just so kind of spiritual writer for many years. I thought, it's not really me. Do you know what I mean? I'm from Essex. I'm quite forthright. And so I've become more authentic and done lots of work with myself over the years. Do people have to like themselves or be self-aware to be authentic and use intuition? Or can you just start from where you are today?
Well, I mean, obviously, if you like yourself, it helps.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the problem is, of course, is that for, you know, we were talking about upbringing, and
yeah.
So unfortunately, sometimes when we have been brought up in that sort of right-wrong thinking, and we've been given lots of practice at making ourselves wrong. Yeah, it's then really easy for us to not like ourselves. And so that does make it harder, because if we don't like ourselves, why would we then make choices that support ourselves, kind of thing? And intuition is all about doing things that support you, that help you live more in your authenticity. And if you think that that's a bit suspect, that doesn't really help. So one of the way that I talk about that for a lot of people, though, that helps them work around that, because of course, to me, if you don't like yourself, actually what that tells me is, well, then you actually don't know who you really are. Because if you knew who you really were, of course you'd like yourself. How could you not? You're bloody brilliant, you know. So but see, the thing is, there's two kind of ways of looking at this kind of path. You know, one to me is kind of more, well, to my mind, it's more like a religious path. And the other one is more kind of this, what I consider a spiritual path, because I have a bit of a distinction between those two things. Probably comes from being brought up Catholic, but you know, never mind. So, see, to me, you know, the whole right, you know, the sort of the religious path is more, it is tied more into that right wrong kind of thinking, in the sense that it's almost like, well, you have to accept that you are imperfect, and your job is to try to beat yourself into a state of perfection. So if that is the approach that you take, then the problem is that you're always looking for the things that are wrong about you. Because then you have to try and make them right. And of course, that unfortunately makes it really easy to not like yourself, because you're always looking for the things that are wrong about you. That it kind of sucks, really. And you know, I have never seen anybody successfully beat themselves into a state of self-love. So, you know, I don't think that works very well.
No.
Whereas for me, the spiritual path is, well, to me, it's really based more on the truth, or at least what I believe is the truth, which is that we are already perfect on one level of our consciousness or another. It's like that tree, you know, the tree, you know, it because of some of the rough things that it's been through in life, you know, it might be covered in mistletoe or vines, or, you know, have some broken branches or whatever, but the pattern of that tree is still perfect. It's just not, because of life circumstances, it may not at this point in time be able to grow according to that pattern. But so for us, it's like we may have lost touch, or, you know, we may have got disconnected from who we truly are, but who we truly are is perfect. So it's not that we have to make ourselves perfect. You know, to me, it's more that we need to learn to reconnect to our perfection. And making something that's imperfect perfect, I mean, just even thinking about it, it feels really hard. Whereas, you know, learning to connect to something that is already perfect, well, that's much more doable. And of course, you know, that's one of the things that your intuition helps you with. And the more that we do that, it helps us understand that, well, I may not like who I'm being today, but that's because I'm not being connected to who I really am. You know, the more I am connected to who I really am, well, of course I'm going to like myself more.
And it's true. And I thought when you said about the tree, I was like, that's so true. Like, 'cause we've all come through and we've all got, you know, our branches snapped, been bruised and broken, but that's what makes us stand out. So whilst we all look like trees, we all look like humans, you know, it is the wounds, the scars, the experience, you know, the yes and no boxes that make us who we are. And I think there should be something in there to love somewhere. But again, it comes down to trust, doesn't it? Like, you have to trust yourself, because you've got all these things in your brain that you've been told, this is who you are, this is who you're going to be. And just for the record, I don't believe in perfection at all. I just think perfection is just someone else's perception, isn't it? Like their opinion of what should be perfect, but as no one's perfect, there can't be any perfections. We're just going to go round. I think, you know, beautifully flawed. We go for beautifully flawed, I think.
I guess the way that I look at it is the only perfect thing that we can be is a perfect us.
Yeah, a perfect version of us. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the perfection that I'm talking about connecting to. We don't need to connect to anything else. Yeah, and it's that see, the thing is that sometimes, if people have got themselves into this state where they really don't like themselves, they really don't trust themselves because they've got so far from who they really are.
Yeah.
I think that, if they, can even if they're not sure if it's true, even if they can just accept it as a working concept, okay, they may not like who they are today or, currently or whatever, but there is this level of who they really are, this version of themselves that, that is, brilliant. That is, that of course they would not just like, but love.
Yeah.
And that, their job is simply to every day just see if they can connect to that a little bit more. It enables them to start moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
And then, it's like momentum with anything. Once we start moving in the right direction, things become easier. And there's so much of what I've found in all the years that I've been sort of working with people is that in many ways, the hardest part of the work, in the sense that the part of the work that seems to be hardest on the clients, that seems to take them the most time to work through, is getting to a point where they actually give themselves permission to be who they really are.
Yeah.
Once people give themselves permission to be who they really are, even if they don't know what that is just yet, well, things get easier. It's a strange thing. It's almost like we think that we should be something that, that we don't like. It's a bit weird, but
I like the permission. I mean, I work a lot with grief, and it's telling people, give yourself permission to grieve, because they think they have to be strong and a stiff upper lip and not now because it's practical. And so to give yourself permission. And it always seems a little bit daft that you have to, because, you're controlling your life, you're accountable. But it is that permission to grieve, the permission to have a good day, bad days, and, just let go.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that, you mentioned grief, because it's something that I've often seen with people. Like when they start from being a long way from who they really are, and they get, they work with their soul seat, and they do all the work, to not just build their intuition, but, be able to listen to themselves, trust themselves, and they get back to a point where they are actually starting to be who they really are.
Yeah.
And they're, and you can see the difference in them, but it's really interesting that they will often go through this period of grieving. So they get to this point, like, things are starting to feel really good, and then this grief seems to come out of nowhere, and they often say to me, I don't understand what it is. I don't even understand what I'm grieving. And and I've seen it so often that these days I almost expect it. It doesn't necessarily happen with everybody, but it happens more often than not. And what it is that they're grieving, they're kind of grieving who they could have been.
Yeah.
If they'd been who they really are all along.
Yeah.
And it's, whether they're grieving lost opportunities, or they're grieving the fact that, well, in a way that, they let themselves lose themselves for all that time.
Yeah. And it is like that. Yeah, absolutely. I always say that grief is triggered when we have a loss of anything we've got an emotional connection to. So it could be even a job you love doing and you're made redundant, you knew who you were in that job role. If it's a dog that dies, your health dies, whatever, a grief will be triggered. And I'm a bit far out as well, and I believe it could be from a past life as well, but we won't go there. We won't go there.
Well, we can if you want, but yeah.
But I think it's more than just this life.
Well, Well, that in a way, that's one of the other things that our intuition is good for. Is like, so much of what causes arguments that gets us stuck, or helps to keep us sort of thinking that we just have to continue being who we are today, doesn't matter how messed up that is the fact that we're often, one of the most uncomfortable things that we can ever do is change our reality. And one of the reasons for that is, in my current reality, I know what is right, I know what is wrong, so I've got a pretty good chance of being right about stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, but if I change realities, I don't know what is right and wrong.
Yeah.
So the thing about intuition, one of the reasons why it really helps us grow is because we get far more comfortable with shifting realities, even to ones that some people might find a bit unusual or whatever, or a bit out there, or whatever you want to call it. Is that when we work with our intuition, part of it, it's two things. One is that we know that our intuition is always helping us navigate toward a more expansive, a more brilliant version of ourselves. So, see, the thing is, if we knew that we were, okay, reality was going to change. However, and and because reality is going to change, we don't know what the new reality is going to be like. But if you knew that the new reality was in some ways going to help you be happier, healthier, wiser, more fulfilled, more inspired, more, have more love in your life, or more abundance, whatever it is, well, would you really care? So the thing is that with your intuition, whether you use it to sort of connect to your future self, or to look at the fact that, well, it doesn't really matter if reality changes, because the one thing that is that you're going to be more of who you really are.
Yeah.
So it's all good.
It is. I could speak to you all day long. I truly could. I just think it's fascinating.
Well, if you want to do another one of these at some point, just let me know. It's fun chatting to you.
Oh, I've loved it. So people are going to want to come and work with you, buy the book and that. So you've got Fractology's got a website, isn't it?
Fractology's got a website. There's, they can find the book either through my website or the Hay House website. Actually, on my website, if people are feeling like they need a little bit of extra support at the moment, if they go to my website, if they go to the kind of the meditation section of the website, there's a healing meditation that I've just got streaming there for people if they want to, just to help them. And it does take them through the soul seed and how to use the soul seed to help themselves feel a bit calmer and help them work on their own health. So that might be useful. And there's also as I said, my new YouTube channel, which I only started. I'd been planning it for a while, but I actually only started it up about 3 weeks ago or something.
Okay, so I've got all the details. I'll put them in the show notes. And the book is The Soul's Brain, The Neurology and Logic of Your Intuition. That right? Fabulous.
Yeah,
Catherine,
perfect.
Thank you so much for sharing with us today. Absolutely loved it.
It's brilliant.
Bless you.
Well,
Take care.
Oh, and you too. Thanks, Shelley.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please ensure you subscribe and do leave a positive review. If you would like to create your own positive changes, head on over to shelleyfknight.com and you can buy yourself a copy of Positive Changes, a self-kick book. If you want some positivity until the next show, come join us over on Facebook. That's Shelley F. Knight, Life Goes On. So I've been Shelley F. Knight, and as always, you've been amazing.